The conference room fell silent as Nathan Hayes slammed his fist on the polished mahogany table. I flinched. My proposal, the one I'd spent 3 sleepless nights perfecting, scattered across the gleaming surface. "This is garbage, Olivia." "Absolute garbage," he snarled, each word a deliberate dagger. "Did you even bother to check these numbers before wasting everyone's time?" Heat crept up my neck as 12 pairs of eyes shifted uncomfortably in my direction. Some colleagues stared at their laptops, others examined their cuticles, anything to avoid witnessing my public execution. I double-checked everything," I stammered, reaching for the papers now strewn across the table. "The market projections are based on the quarterly reports that—" "That what?" Nathan cut me off, his voice dripping with disdain. "That you clearly didn't understand? Christ, this is why we shouldn't promote people beyond their capabilities." The words hung in the air like poison gas. My hands trembled as I gathered my materials, willing myself not to cry. Not here. Not in front of him. Nathan leaned back, straightening his Italian silk tie, satisfaction gleaming in his steel-gray eyes. "Let's move on to something worth our time. Marcus, you're up." I slid back into my chair, invisible now, as my colleague Marcus eagerly took the floor. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of voices and presentations, none of which I absorbed. All I could hear was Nathan's voice on repeat: "This is why we shouldn't promote people beyond their capabilities." It wasn't the first time. Over the past 8 months as marketing director at Harrington and Walsh Financial, I'd endured Nathan's particular brand of leadership, public humiliation wrapped in the veneer of constructive criticism. But it was the first time he'd questioned my promotion in front of the entire executive team. When the meeting finally ended, I rushed to escape, but Nathan's voice sliced through the shuffle of departing executives. "Olivia. My office. Now." Swallowing hard, I followed him down the corridor to his corner office, the sanctum of his authority with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Chicago. He closed the door with deliberate softness, which somehow felt more threatening than a slam. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to the chair across from his imposing desk. I complied, spine straight, hands folded in my lap to hide their trembling. "Olivia Wheeler," he pronounced, as if my name itself was a disappointment. "I recommended you for this position because I thought you had potential. Was I wrong?" "No, sir," I replied, hating the smallness of my voice. "My proposal was solid. The market indicators suggest—" "The market indicators suggest you're out of your depth," he interrupted, leaning forward. "This isn't some entry-level position where enthusiasm compensates for incompetence. This is the big leagues." I bit my tongue, tasting blood. Every instinct screamed to defend myself, to point out that my team had consistently outperformed projections, that our last campaign had brought in 3 major clients. But I knew from experience that contradicting Nathan Hayes only fueled his fire. "I understand," I said instead, the words ashen in my mouth. "Do you?" His eyebrow arched. "Because I'm not sure you do. Let me be perfectly clear, Olivia. One more misstep like today, and I'll have to reconsider your position here. There are a dozen hungry young marketers who would kill for your office." The threat wasn't subtle. It hung between us, heavy and suffocating. "That won't be necessary," I managed, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I'll revise the proposal by tomorrow morning." "Make it tonight," he countered with a thin smile. "I want it in my inbox by 9 p.m. Show me you want this job." I nodded, already calculating how I'd have to cancel my dinner plans with my sister, who was visiting from Boston. "Good," Nathan said, turning his attention to his computer screen, dismissing me without another word. As I stood to leave, he added without looking up, "Oh, and Olivia? Make sure you get it right this time." I'd hate to see such a promising career cut short because someone couldn't handle the pressure. I closed his office door behind me with exquisite care, walked calmly to the women's restroom, locked myself in the furthest stall, and finally let the tears come. 15 minutes later, I'd pulled myself together enough to text my sister, Rachel. "Have to cancel dinner. Work emergency. I'm so sorry." Her reply came immediately, "Again? Liv, this is the third time this visit." I stared at my phone, guilt compounding my misery. Rachel was right. This was becoming a pattern, Nathan making impossible demands, me abandoning my personal life to meet them. But what choice did I have? In this economy, with my mortgage, my mother's assisted living payments, and the student loans still hanging over my head, I couldn't risk my job. Especially not one that paid as well as marketing director at a top financial firm. I returned to my office, closed the door, and opened my laptop. As I began reworking the proposal, a new email notification appeared. From nathan.hayes@harringtonwalsh.com. Subject: Additional requirements. Olivia. Upon further reflection, I also need comprehensive competitor analyses for the Thompson and Westfield accounts included in tonight's revision. Make sure the Thompson data includes their recent acquisition. NH. My stomach twisted. He had to know, that the Thompson acquisition had just been announced yesterday. There'd barely been a press release, let alone enough information for a comprehensive analysis. This wasn't about improving my proposal. This was Nathan setting me up to fail. I pressed my palms against my eyes, fighting a fresh wave of tears. Then I straightened my shoulders, took a deep breath, and picked up my phone. "Rachel? I'm so sorry about dinner. But I have a favor to ask. Could you bring takeout to my office instead? I'm going to be here late, and I could use a friendly face." 4 hours later, surrounded by empty Thai food containers, with Rachel asleep on my office couch, I sent the revised proposal to Nathan. It wasn't perfect, the Thompson analysis was necessarily sparse, but it was the best I could do with the time and information available. I gently woke my sister. "Hey, time to go. I'm done." Rachel blinked sleepily, then focused on me with concern. "Liv, you can't keep doing this. This guy is toxic. Why don't you look for another job?" I sighed, gathering my things. "It's not that simple, Rach. Jobs at this level don't grow on trees, especially for women in finance. Plus, Nathan's just temporarily filling in as interim CEO since Harrington retired. Once they hire a permanent replacement, things will settle down." "And when will that be?" she pressed. "The board is interviewing candidates now. A few more months, tops." I tried to sound more confident than I felt. "I just need to hang on until then." Rachel looked unconvinced but didn't push further. "Promise me you'll at least think about it? For my sake, if not your own?" "I promise," I said, giving her a tired smile. "Now let's go home before we turn into pumpkins." As we walked to the parking garage, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had to give. I couldn't keep living like this, dreading each workday, jumping at Nathan's every command, sacrificing my personal life to appease his impossible standards. But I also couldn't walk away from everything I'd worked so hard to achieve. What I didn't know then, couldn't have guessed, was that in less than a year, everything would change. The tables would turn in ways neither Nathan nor I could possibly anticipate. And the power dynamic that had defined our relationship would be completely, irrevocably reversed. 2 weeks after my humiliation in the conference room, I found myself standing outside Nathan's office, hand poised to knock. Through the glass wall, I could see him on the phone, gesturing emphatically, face twisted in that familiar expression of irritation. My stomach clenched. Whatever news he was receiving, it wasn't good, which meant my timing couldn't be worse. But the email he'd sent 30 minutes ago had been clear: my office. 2 p.m. Don't be late. At precisely 2 o'clock, I knocked and entered without waiting for permission, one of Nathan's many unspoken rules. Being early was as unacceptable as being late. "I'll call you back," he barked into the phone, then slammed it down. "Olivia. Sit." I perched on the edge of the visitor's chair, mentally reviewing my recent work for potential failures. The revised proposal had been met with grudging approval. My team's quarterly numbers were strong. What fresh hell had I stumbled into? Nathan steepled his fingers, studying me with cold calculation. "The Thompson account. What's the status?" "We've scheduled the initial creative presentation for next Thursday," I replied, relief flooding through me. This was an easy question. They've responded positively to our preliminary concepts. I've assigned Melanie and Jordan as the lead creatives, with Derek handling strategy. "Unassign them," Nathan said flatly. "I'm taking over the Thompson account personally." I blinked. "I'm sorry? Are you deaf as well as incompetent?" His lips curled into a sneer. "I said I'm taking over the account. Thompson is too important to risk on your team's experimental approach." The injustice of it burned like acid. The Thompson deal was the result of months of work, my work. I'd cultivated the relationship, identified their needs, crafted the pitch that won them over. With all due respect, I began carefully, my team has been working with Thompson for months. We've built rapport, we understand their vision. Your team, Nathan cut in, has been playing it safe. Thompson needs innovation, not the same tired strategies you've been recycling. I bit back the retort that threatened to escape. My tired strategies had increased client retention by 23% in the past quarter alone. "Nathan, please." I tried again, professional mask firmly in place. "At least let me stay involved. I can work with you, incorporate your feedback." "This isn't a negotiation, Olivia," he snapped. "I've already spoken with Thompson. They're excited about my personal involvement." The realization hit me like a physical blow. He hadn't just decided this, he'd already gone behind my back to make it happen. "I see," I said, my voice hollow. "Do you?" Nathan leaned back, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "Because this is the part of leadership most people struggle with, knowing when to step aside. Recognizing your limitations." The subtext was clear: know your place. "I'll inform my team," I said, standing on legs that felt suddenly weak. "Good. Have them send me all their files by end of day." He turned to his computer, already dismissing me. "And Olivia? Try to be professional about this. Nobody likes a sore loser." I walked out of his office with as much dignity as I could muster, closed my office door behind me, and sank into my chair. The Thompson account had been my biggest win this year, the validation I desperately needed to prove myself in this role. And Nathan had just stolen it, simply because he could. My desk phone rang, startling me out of my spiral. I glanced at the caller ID, Madison Chen, HR Director. With a sense of foreboding, I answered. "Olivia? Do you have a moment to come to my office?" Madison's voice was professionally neutral, but something in her tone set off alarm bells. Of course. I'll be right there. Madison's office was a stark contrast to Nathan's minimalist dominion: warm colors, family photos, a small plant thriving on her windowsill. She gestured for me to sit, her expression unreadable. I wanted to check in, she began carefully. We've received some concerns about your recent performance. My chest tightened. Concerns? From whom? Madison's hesitation told me everything. I'm not at liberty to say specifically, but there's been mention of missed deadlines, communication issues with clients, and some questions about your management style. Nathan. It had to be. He was systematically undermining me. Madison, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, I've never missed a deadline. My team's performance metrics are among the highest in the company. And I've received nothing but positive feedback from clients. I paused, choosing my next words carefully. Is it possible these concerns are coming from a single source? Madison studied me, something flickering in her eyes: sympathy, perhaps. Or recognition. Olivia, you know I can't discuss specific feedback sources. She sighed. But I will say that performance evaluations should always be based on objective metrics, not personal opinions. She slid a folder across the desk. These are your team's stats for the past 2 quarters. As you can see, they're excellent. This goes in your file too, alongside any other feedback. The message was clear: Madison knew what was happening. She was doing what she could within the constraints of her position, creating a paper trail of my actual performance to counter Nathan's narrative. Thank you, I said quietly, grateful for this small act of corporate rebellion. Just keep doing what you're doing, Madison advised. Document everything. And Olivia? She lowered her voice. I've been at Harrington and Walsh for 15 years. I've seen executives come and go. The board is interviewing CEO candidates as we speak. This situation isn't permanent. I left Madison's office with the folder clutched to my chest like a shield. It wasn't much, but it was something: proof that I wasn't imagining things, that Nathan's treatment wasn't justified by any failing on my part. But as I walked back to my office, I wondered how much longer I could endure this war of attrition. Nathan held all the power. He could make my life miserable, sabotage my reputation, potentially even engineer my dismissal if he was determined enough. And for what? I'd never done anything to antagonize him. From the moment he'd stepped in as interim CEO 8 months ago, he'd seemed to take personal pleasure in criticizing and belittling me, as if my very existence as a female executive offended him somehow. Over the next few weeks, Nathan's campaign intensified. The Thompson account flourished under his personal attention, a fact he mentioned at every opportunity. Meanwhile, I found myself excluded from key meetings, my team's resources quietly redirected to other departments, my input ignored or dismissed. Each day was a fresh exercise in humiliation and frustration. Each night, I returned home exhausted from the effort of maintaining my professional facade while being systematically marginalized. Then, on a rainy Tuesday in November, everything changed. I was working late, finalizing a presentation, when my office phone rang. Olivia Wheeler, I answered, absently. Ms. Wheeler? This is Amanda Larson, from the Office of the Board of Directors. I straightened immediately. The board rarely communicated directly with anyone below C-suite level. Yes, Ms. Larson. How can I help you? The board would like to meet with you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Chairman Ellis's office. Can you confirm your attendance? My mind raced. Why would the board want to meet with me? Had Nathan's campaign against me reached its inevitable conclusion? Of course, I managed. I'll be there. Excellent. Please keep this meeting confidential for now. The line went dead, leaving me staring at the phone. Was I being fired? It seemed unlikely the board would involve themselves directly for a routine termination. But what else could it be? I barely slept that night, my mind cycling through possibilities, each more anxiety-inducing than the last. By morning, I was operating on caffeine and adrenaline, dressed in my most conservative navy suit, hair pulled back in a severe knot. Chairman Ellis's office was impressive even by executive standards, a corner suite on the top floor with views of Lake Michigan, decorated with subdued elegance that spoke of old money and established power. Ellis himself, a distinguished man in his 60s, rose to greet me as his assistant showed me in. To my surprise, he wasn't alone. 3 other board members were present, all watching me with curious intensity. Ms. Wheeler, thank you for joining us, Ellis said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. I believe you know Directors Chen, Abernathy, and Washington? I nodded, shaking each hand in turn, my anxiety mounting. This was no routine meeting. Ms. Wheeler, Ellis continued once we were seated, how long have you been with Harrington and Walsh? 5 years next month, I replied. I started in marketing management and was promoted to director 18 months ago. And in that time, you've displayed remarkable talent, Director Washington said, consulting a folder. Your campaigns have consistently outperformed projections, and client feedback on your work has been exceptional. This didn't sound like a termination meeting. I shifted in my seat, uncertain how to respond. Thank you, but I can't take all the credit. My team is exceptional. A team you built and cultivated, Director Chin noted. Turnover in marketing has decreased 40% since you took over, while productivity has increased. That speaks to your leadership. Ellis leaned forward, hands clasped on his desk. Ms. Wheeler, we've been conducting a thorough search for a permanent CEO to replace Nathan Hayes, who has been serving in an interim capacity since Gerald Harrington's retirement. My heart pounded so loudly I was certain they could hear it. Surely they weren't. We've interviewed numerous candidates, both internal and external, Ellis continued. And after extensive deliberation, the board would like to offer you the position. The room seemed to tilt. I gripped the arms of my chair to steady myself. Me? I managed, my voice embarrassingly thin. But I haven't been groomed for this role? Ellis smiled slightly. No, you haven't. And that's precisely why we want you. Director Abernathy, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. Harrington and Walsh has been stagnating, Ms. Wheeler. We've been promoting from the same pool of candidates, perpetuating the same hierarchical thinking. Your approach to marketing, innovative, client-focused, collaborative, represents the direction this company needs to move in. But my experience, I began, is different from traditional candidates, Director Chin finished. And that's valuable. You have a proven track record of adaptation and innovation. You understand our clients. You inspire loyalty in your team. And, Director Washington added, you've demonstrated remarkable resilience and professionalism under challenging circumstances. The glance exchanged between the board members told me they weren't unaware of Nathan's behavior. We're not offering you this position because you're the safe choice, Ms. Wheeler, Ellis said frankly. We're offering it because you're the right choice. The board is unanimous in this decision. I took a deep breath, trying to process the enormity of what was happening. And Nathan Hayes? The question hung in the air. Ellis's expression hardened slightly. Mr. Hayes was informed of our decision yesterday. He will be returning to his previous role as Chief Financial Officer, reporting directly to the CEO, which, should you accept our offer, would be you. The implication was clear. The man who had made my professional life a living hell for the past 8 months would now be my subordinate. The tables would be completely turned. For a brief, intoxicating moment, I imagined Nathan's face when he realized the power dynamic had shifted, the humiliation, the rage, the impotent frustration I'd become so intimately familiar with. But as quickly as the thought arose, I pushed it away. That kind of vindictive thinking was Nathan's territory, not mine. I appreciate the board's confidence, I said carefully. This is unexpected. May I have some time to consider? Of course, Ellis nodded. We've prepared a formal offer for your review. Amanda will provide you with the details. We hope to hear your decision by the end of the week. As I left the meeting, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions: shock, disbelief, anticipation, and an unexpected weight of responsibility. This wasn't just about Nathan anymore. This was about leading an entire company, about proving the board's faith in me wasn't misplaced, and somewhere beneath it all, a small voice whispered, "What will you do with this power?" The golden light of late afternoon slanted through my office windows as I reviewed the board's offer for the 4th time. The numbers were staggering: a base salary 3 times my current compensation, plus bonuses, stock options, and benefits that made my head spin. But it wasn't the money that kept drawing my attention back to the last page. It was the org chart, with my name at the top, and directly below it, among the other C-suite executives, Nathan Hayes, CFO. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. I looked up to see Madison Chin standing in my doorway, a knowing smile on her face. "So," she said, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. "The rumors are true." I raised an eyebrow. That was fast. The board asked me to keep it confidential. Madison laughed. "Please. The boardroom is the leakiest ship in corporate waters." She lowered herself into the chair across from me. "I just came to say congratulations. And that it couldn't have happened to a more deserving person." "Thank you," I said, still not quite believing it myself. "Though I haven't officially accepted yet." Madison's eyes widened. "You can't possibly be considering turning it down?" I sighed, gesturing to the org chart. "I'm just processing the implications. Especially when it comes to certain personnel." "You mean Nathan," she said bluntly. I nodded. "Olivia, listen to me." Madison leaned forward, her expression intense. "You earned this. Not because of Nathan, not despite Nathan, but because you're exceptionally good at what you do. Don't let him factor into your decision." "That's just it, though," I said, voicing the concern that had been nagging at me. "What if I'm the wrong person for this job? What if the board is only choosing me because I'm different from Nathan, not because I'm qualified?" Madison sat back, studying me. "Do you think the board of a multi-billion-dollar company would offer its highest position to someone unqualified just to make a point?" She shook her head. "They chose you because they see what I've seen for years. Leadership isn't about bullying subordinates or hoarding power. It's about vision, inspiration, and bringing out the best in people. Skills you have in abundance." Her words struck a chord. Throughout my career, I'd built my reputation on collaboration rather than competition, on lifting others rather than stepping on them. "And as for Nathan," Madison continued, "you're not him. You won't abuse your position the way he has. But that doesn't mean you should hesitate to use your authority when necessary. Sometimes, the most compassionate thing a leader can do is hold people accountable. As Madison left, her words lingered. I turned back to the offer letter, my decision crystallizing. I'd spent months enduring Nathan's abuse, doubting myself, wondering if I truly belonged in leadership. Now I had the chance to prove that a different approach to power was not only possible but preferable. That leadership could be both kind and effective. That the old boys club mentality Nathan embodied was no longer the only path to success. I signed the letter. Monday morning arrived with a crisp clarity that matched my resolve. I'd spent the weekend preparing for this moment, reviewing financials, researching leadership transition strategies, crafting the message I wanted to deliver to the company. But first, there was a more immediate conversation to be had. Nathan's assistant looked up in surprise as I approached his office. "Ms. Wheeler, I don't believe you're on Mr. Hayes's calendar this morning." "That's all right, Janet," I said with a smile. "I won't need an appointment anymore. Please ensure we're not disturbed." Confusion flickered across her face, but she nodded. I knocked once on Nathan's door and entered without waiting for a response, one last time following his own rules. He glanced up from his computer, annoyance immediately hardening his features. "Olivia." "I'm busy." "Nathan," I said, closing the door behind me. "We need to talk." Something in my tone must have registered, because he leaned back, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "What is it?" I took a seat across from him without being invited, a small act of rebellion that didn't go unnoticed. "I had an interesting meeting with the board last week," I began, watching his expression carefully. "They offered me a new position." Nathan's lips curled into a smirk. "Let me guess. They're restructuring marketing to better align with our strategic goals." "It's about time." "Not exactly," I replied evenly. "They offered me the CEO position." "I've accepted." The transformation of his face would have been comical under different circumstances. Disbelief, shock, outrage, each emotion played across his features in rapid succession. "That's impossible," he finally managed. "I'm next in line. I've been running this company for 8 months." "The board made its decision unanimously," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "The announcement goes out company-wide at noon. I wanted to inform you personally first." "This is absurd," Nathan sputtered, rising from his chair. "I'm the most qualified candidate by far. This is some kind of diversity stunt." I remained seated, refusing to engage with his anger. "The board disagrees with your assessment. They believe my leadership style better aligns with the company's future direction." "My leadership style?" He was practically shouting now. "You mean actually holding people accountable? Demanding excellence? Not accepting mediocrity?" I waited until his tirade subsided, then stood slowly. "Nathan, I understand this is difficult news. The board values your financial expertise and wants you to continue as CFO. Which means, effective immediately, you'll be reporting to me." Rage contorted his features. "I will not report to you," he hissed. "I'll resign before I take orders from some diversity hire who slept her way to the top." I had anticipated anger, even insults, but the raw hatred in his voice still caught me off guard. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "That's your choice, of course," I said calmly. "Though I'm not sure how you'll explain walking away from one of the most prestigious CFO positions in the industry. Especially given that non-compete clause in your contract." His eyes narrowed. I continued, my voice level. The board has given me full authority to build my executive team. If you choose to resign, I'll accept that. If you choose to stay, I expect professionalism and cooperation. I moved toward the door. I'll need your decision by the end of the day. As I reached for the handle, I paused. And Nathan? The comments about my qualifications and how I obtained this position are inappropriate and could be considered sexual harassment. As CEO, I have a responsibility to ensure this company maintains a respectful environment for all employees. I hope I won't have to address such comments again. I left before he could respond, closing the door quietly behind me. Janet looked up, wide-eyed. She had clearly heard at least part of the exchange. Ms. Wheeler, I should say. Olivia is still fine, Janet, I assured her with a smile. Change is coming, but not all change has to be dramatic. As I walked back to my office, soon to be my former office, as I'd be moving to the executive suite, I felt a complex mix of emotions. There was no triumphant glee, no vengeful satisfaction as I might have imagined. Instead, I felt a sobering sense of responsibility. The power I now held wasn't just about righting personal wrongs, it was about steering an entire company in a healthier direction. By noon, the announcement had gone out, and my email was flooded with congratulations. My team organized an impromptu celebration, their genuine excitement touching me deeply. These were the people who had supported me through the darkest months of Nathan's reign, who had witnessed his abuse and stood by me anyway. But amid the celebration, a message appeared from Janet. Nathan has cleared out his office and left. His resignation letter is on his desk. I excused myself from the celebration and made my way back to Nathan's office. It was eerily empty, personal items removed, leaving only company equipment and furniture. On the desk lay a single sheet of paper. His resignation was brief and coldly professional, citing strategic differences with new leadership. No acknowledgement of his behavior, no apology for his actions. Just a sterile, face-saving exit. I wasn't surprised. Men like Nathan rarely take responsibility for their actions. In his mind, I had wronged him by taking his position, not the other way around. I folded the letter and slid it into my pocket. There would be logistics to handle, exit interviews, transition planning, finding a new CFO. But for now, I took a moment to stand in the office that had been the site of so much of my humiliation and anxiety. The space already felt different, lighter somehow, without Nathan's oppressive presence. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison, "Welcome to the big leagues, CEO. Ready for your first executive meeting?" I smiled, typing back, "On my way." As I left Nathan's office, I passed the wall of former CEOs, a line of stern-faced men in expensive suits, their portraits a testament to the company's traditional power structure. Soon, my picture would join them, the first woman in the company's history to reach this position. But more important than breaking that glass ceiling was the kind of leader I intended to be. Not a female version of Nathan, wielding power as a weapon, but someone who understood that true leadership wasn't about domination or fear. It was about empowering others. Creating a culture of respect and collaboration. Using authority to lift people up rather than tear them down. The executive boardroom fell silent as I entered, all eyes turning toward me. I took my place at the head of the table, in the chair that had been Nathan's just days before. "Thank you all for being here," I began, looking around at the faces of my new executive team. Some appeared curious, others cautious, a few openly skeptical. I know leadership transitions can be challenging, and this one has been particularly abrupt. But I believe it also presents an opportunity to reevaluate how we work together, how we serve our clients, and how we grow as a company. I paused, letting the words settle. I'm not Nathan Hayes, I continued, addressing the elephant in the room. I have a different leadership style, different priorities, and a different vision for our future. Some of you may welcome that change. Others may have concerns. Both reactions are valid, and my door is always open for honest conversation. I laid out my initial priorities: a comprehensive review of our client portfolio, evaluation of internal processes, and a renewed focus on company culture. The board didn't choose me because I'm a woman, or because I'm younger than traditional candidates, I said, meeting each pair of eyes around the table. They chose me because they believe this company needs to evolve. And that's what we're going to do, together. The meeting proceeded, and as the initial tension dissolved into productive discussion, I felt the first stirrings of confidence in my new role. These weren't Nathan's people, they were mine now. And together, we could build something better than the toxic environment he had created. After the meeting, Director Washington pulled me aside. That was impressive, Olivia. You're already proving the board made the right choice. Thank you, I said. Though I know some of the team may need time to adjust. Of course they will, he agreed. Change is never easy. But necessary change is worth the discomfort. He studied me for a moment. You know, Nathan tried to block your promotion when you became marketing director. Said you weren't ready, that you'd crumble under pressure. I blinked, surprised by this revelation. I didn't know that. Gerald Harrington overruled him, Washington continued. Said Nathan's judgment was clouded by outdated thinking. Looks like Gerald was right. As Washington walked away, I absorbed this new piece of information. Nathan's antagonism toward me hadn't begun when he became interim CEO, it had existed much longer. Perhaps since the moment I threatened his perception of who deserved power in this company. The realization should have angered me, but instead, it brought clarity. Nathan's abuse had never been about my performance or capabilities. It had been about his own insecurity, his fear of a changing corporate landscape where people like me could rise to positions of authority. And now, standing at the center of that change, I had the opportunity to ensure no one else suffered as I had under his leadership. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of transition activities. I hired a new CFO, Elaine Kapoor, a brilliant financial strategist who shared my collaborative approach. We restructured several departments, implemented new client engagement strategies, and launched a company-wide initiative to improve workplace culture. The changes weren't always easy. Some longtime employees, particularly those who had thrived under Nathan's leadership, resisted the new direction. A few eventually left for other opportunities. But many more embraced the shift, finding their voices in an environment that suddenly valued their input and creativity. 6 months into my tenure as CEO, I received an unexpected visitor. I looked up from my computer to find Madison standing in my doorway, holding a newspaper. "Have you seen this?" she asked, dropping it on my desk. The business section featured a profile of Nathan Hayes, recently named CFO at a smaller regional firm. The headline read, "Finance Veteran Takes Step Back for More Balanced Approach to Career." I skimmed the article, which painted Nathan as deliberately choosing a less demanding role to focus on mentorship and developing the next generation of financial leaders. There was no mention of his resignation from Harrington and Walsh, no hint of the circumstances that had led to his departure. Madison watched me read, her expression a mix of disgust and amusement. Unbelievable, right? He's rewriting history. I sat back, considering the article. It's exactly what I'd expect, I said finally, folding the newspaper and setting it aside. Men like Nathan don't admit failure. They reframe it as a strategic choice. Madison shook her head. Doesn't it bother you? After everything he put you through? I considered the question carefully. A year ago, it would have infuriated me. But now? I gestured around my office, the space that had once been his sanctuary of power. I have more important things to focus on than Nathan's narrative. After Madison left, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The humiliation and fear I'd felt under Nathan's leadership seemed almost like another lifetime, a dark chapter that had strengthened me rather than broken me. That evening, as I prepared to leave the office, I passed the wall of CEO portraits, now updated to include my own, a confident smile replacing the stern expressions of my predecessors. The contrast wasn't just about gender, it represented a fundamental shift in leadership philosophy. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel, "Dinner still on for tonight? Can't wait to hear about your day, CEO sis." I smiled, typing back a quick confirmation. As I stepped into the elevator, a young marketing associate joined me, clutching a stack of presentation materials. "Ms. Wheeler," she said, clearly nervous. "I just wanted to say, the changes you've made since becoming CEO, they've made a real difference. Especially for younger women like me. It means a lot to see someone like you in leadership." Her words touched me deeply. "Thank you, Jennifer. That means more than you know." As the elevator descended, I thought about the power of example, how seeing someone like yourself succeed can expand your sense of what's possible. I hadn't aimed to be a symbol or a trailblazer, but perhaps that role was as important as the operational changes I was implementing. The doors opened to the lobby, where the company's mission statement was emblazoned on the wall, building financial futures through integrity, innovation, and partnership. Under Nathan's leadership, those had been empty words. Under mine, they were becoming reality, not because I was inherently better than him, but because I understood something he never had. True power isn't about dominance or control. It's about creating spaces where everyone can thrive. As I stepped out into the Chicago evening, the weight of responsibility balanced by the satisfaction of purpose, I felt a sense of completion. The tables hadn't just turned, they'd been completely redesigned. And the view from this side was infinitely better.